I was 3 states away, trapped in a mediation that refused to die, when the Sunridge Estates Homeowners Association decided my trailer had abandoned itself. But the trailer was never the beginning. The beginning was a magnolia, and after that, a latch, and after that, a printed lie taped to my garage. Regina Voss lost to me 3 times before she finally found a way to win that would cost her everything, and I want to tell it in order, because the order is the whole point. My name is David Lang. I'm 45, and for 20 years I've practiced commercial litigation, which means I spend my working life proving that someone took a thing that wasn't theirs and making them pay a generous multiple of its value for the education. Conversion, breach, damages. This is the water I swim in. I mention it only because the Sunridge board was about to gift wrap the most satisfying case of my career and hand it to me while congratulating themselves on their diligence. The magnolia came 6 weeks after I moved in. I'd planted a young one near the property line, and within days a violation notice appeared under Regina's looping signature, declaring the tree an unapproved vegetative installation, subject to daily fines until removed. I pulled the actual covenants, not the imaginary version quoted in the notice, and found precisely nothing prohibiting a homeowner from planting a tree on his own soil. I wrote back, citing the sections by number, politely, almost warmly. The notice vanished without a word. No retraction, no apology, just silence, which I would soon learn was the specific sound of Regina losing and refusing to admit it. I filed the exchange. I file everything. It's a personality defect that has bought me a house. The second fight was the latch. My side gate closed with a bronze latch Regina decided was the incorrect approved finish, and this time she dispatched her enforcement man in person, a heavy-set fellow named Carl who wore his association lanyard like a marshal's badge. Carl planted himself in my driveway and lectured me about the board's broad discretion over exterior hardware, and I explained, gently, that broad discretion is not unlimited authority, and that the architectural finish schedule he kept referencing did not appear to exist anywhere in the recorded documents. He blinked, told me, "We'll see about that," and retreated. No fine ever came because there was no rule to hang one on. But I wrote down that phrase, "We'll see about that," and I noted the way Carl's confidence galloped a full mile ahead of his paperwork. Loud men who don't document are a litigator's favorite kind of witness. The third fight should have ended the war before the real casualties. My enclosed work trailer sat on my own driveway, plated, registered, legal, and Regina fired off a notice branding it a commercial eyesore in violation of the parking rules. So I read the parking rules. Every line of them governed the street and the common areas. The covenant explicitly exempted a homeowner's own driveway. I sent Regina 2 paragraphs citing Nevada's Common Interest Community Statute, Chapter 116, which I know the way other people know the words to their favorite song, and reminded her, in the driest sentence I could construct, that a board acting beyond its granted authority exposes not only the association, but its individual directors to personal liability. That notice disappeared too. 3 violations, 3 defeats, 3 humiliations she never acknowledged. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt the cold little draft you feel when a bully keeps losing and keeps not leaving, because it means she's stopped hunting for a rule and started hunting for a moment. Regina found her moment while I was out of town. I'd left the trailer on my driveway for a 4-day trip, and inside it, strapped down, locked, invisible from the street, sat roughly $80,000 of surveying and testing equipment that did not belong to me. It belonged to Sierra Equipment Leasing, rented under my firm's name on a contract whose bold print assigned full liability for loss to the lessee. The kind of bold print lawyers write specifically so it can be read aloud in a courtroom someday. There was a hard return deadline attached. That detail would end up mattering far more than I wanted it to. I came home to a bare driveway and a torn adhesive sticker fluttering on my garage door. I photographed it before I did anything else, before I'd finished feeling the anger, because 2 decades of litigation trained the documentation reflex to fire ahead of the emotion. The sticker read, Notice of abandonment. Property brought into compliance. And it carried a date. The date was 2 days prior. Whatever process Regina imagined she had followed had therefore begun and concluded inside a window far too narrow to satisfy any notice period Nevada law has required for anything, ever. In her rush to finally beat me, she had stamped a signed confession onto my garage and left it flapping in the desert wind. I walked into the Sunridge office the next morning and did not mention what I do for a living. Regina received me with the serene condescension of a woman certain she has at last solved a stubborn problem. The trailer, she explained, had been determined abandoned and removed and disposed of pursuant to association authority. When I asked where it was, she waved a manicured hand. "It's been handled." Carl, hovering by the filing cabinet, filled the silence the way Carl fills every silence. "Don't lose sleep over the stuff inside," he offered. "We got a guy. Moves this kind of thing real quick. Everybody comes out fine." I asked him, mildly, to say that again. He obliged, grinning. And my doorbell app, still linked to my phone, still recording, because of course it was, captured every syllable. "We got a guy. Moves this kind of thing." As though this weren't the first time, as though there were a system. I thanked them, requested every scrap of documentation on the abandonment procedure in writing, and walked out before my face could betray the fact that they had just handed me a sword and pointed to their own throat. Then I opened a file, and this time it wasn't a grievance folder. It was a case, and the law was not remotely close. Nevada statute and its abandoned vehicle provisions demand notice, a genuine waiting period, and a defined sequence of steps before anyone lays a finger on a registered vehicle, let alone sells it. And the sticker's own date proved none of it had occurred. The tow had been performed by an outfit lacking the proper license. No title had ever transferred, which rendered the sale that Carl's guy had made legally void, because you cannot sell what you hold no title to. The board had conveyed exactly nothing while pocketing cash for it. That alone was a clean conversion claim, the wrongful exercise of dominion over another's property, and, half asleep, I could take treble damages to a Nevada judge on those facts. But the trailer was the small case. The $80,000 of Sierra's equipment was the enormous one, because the board had not merely taken my property, they had taken and sold to a stranger for pocket money the property of a company whose only sin was renting gear to a tenant. I picked up the phone and made the call I dreaded most, to Sierra Equipment Leasing, and told them exactly what had become of their inventory. Sierra, as it happens, also employed attorneys, and those attorneys possessed no neighborly patience to exhaust, no relationship to preserve, and one very large number to recover. Within a week, the Sunridge board faced not one adversary, but two, and the second had come to win. I filed my own action. Conversion, statutory violations, damages, supported Sierra's parallel suit, and lodged a formal complaint with the state's Common Interest Ombudsman and the Real Estate Division, so that Regina would be answering to regulators and judges simultaneously, on separate clocks, in separate rooms. People who build their lives out of cut corners cannot survive being made to account for their time in 3 venues at once. The corners are all they have, and you cannot stand on a corner in 3 places. Regina's counterattack was a clinic in digging upward. Rather than settle, she had Carl generate, several days after the fact, a freshly minted board resolution formally documenting the abandonment determination, backdated and undone by the very office printer whose metadata would later make an investigator smile. She mailed me a new notice threatening fines for improper storage of the trailer, having apparently forgotten that the trailer's storage was now entirely her problem. And she quietly sent Carl to buy the trailer back from his guy and make the whole thing evaporate, except the guy had already stripped it and resold the shell, and all Carl returned with was a texted receipt showing a cash sale of $800, which the buyer, feeling the wind shift, forwarded straight to me with a nervous little apology. Fabricating evidence after a lawsuit lands is not a cover-up. It is a second offense, and this one arrived pre-documented. The crack, when it came from within. The association's treasurer, A jittery retiree named Foster, who had signed things unread for years, requested a private meeting the day the ombudsman's inquiry reached his mailbox with his own name printed on it. Nothing refreshes a man's memory like personal liability. Foster brought a folder, and inside it were notes on other confiscations: a jet ski, a motorcycle, a utility trailer, each one abandoned, each one handled, each one sold quietly for cash that had never fully reconciled against the association's books. My trailer wasn't an overreach. It was simply the newest transaction in a years-long racket, and Foster, terrified of drowning for other people's sins, handed me the ledger that turned my single case into a pattern with a body count. After that, the collapse was less an event than a slow-motion foreclosure. The association's insurer reviewed the claims, read the words intentional conversion and undisclosed cash sales, and declined coverage because insurers do not pay for deliberate wrongdoing, which meant the money had to come from Sunridge itself, and Sunridge did not have it. Carl's recorded "We Got a Guy" played beside Foster's ledger threw the door open for the earlier victims, who surfaced within days once word traveled. Regina's backdated resolution and the board's conduct beyond any lawful authority stripped away the shield that ordinarily protects directors, leaving her and Carl personally exposed down to their own bank accounts. The regulator sanctioned the association and ordered the confiscation practice dissolved. And in the final exquisite irony, the only path Sunridge had to fund the judgments was an emergency special assessment levied on every homeowner in the community, which meant Regina's own neighbors each received a bill for her tidiness, and they carried those bills into the next meeting like torches. She did not remain president long enough to bang the gavel. I settled for a figure I'm contractually forbidden to print, and used a sliver of it to buy a new enclosed trailer, sturdier than the last. I returned Sierra's replacement equipment 2 days inside the deadline, and then I parked the new trailer in the exact spot on my own driveway where the old one had stood, plated, registered, immaculately legal, and left it there in plain view, a quiet little monument to the difference between authority and the costume of it. Channel author here, stepping out of David's shoes, because this one is a lesson in how a bully's confidence outruns their paperwork right off a cliff. Where did Regina go wrong? She lost 3 small fights first: the tree, the latch, the parking notice, each one proving she had never actually read the documents she claimed to enforce. And instead of retreating, she went hunting for a moment she couldn't lose. Then she moved too fast and stamped a dated abandonment sticker that proved, in her own ink, that no legal waiting period had passed. Carl bragged about a guy who moves this kind of thing, converting a one-time act into evidence of a years-long racket, and not one of them stopped to ask what was inside the trailer. Selling a third party's $80,000 equipment turned a neighbor squabble into a war with a company that had lawyers and zero reason for mercy. Practical takeaways: photograph everything the instant something is wrong. That dated sticker was the entire case. Understand that a board acting beyond its authority can forfeit the protection that shields its directors and become personally liable. And never assume the abandoned thing is empty, or that it's only yours to lose. Question for you: if an HOA sold your property and to strangers right out from under you, would you have built the patient multi-front siege David did, or stormed straight into that office and made a scene? Tell me below. I want to know who plays chess and who flips the board across the room.